Welcome to the Style and Strategy Podcast, where personal brand meets leadership and style. I'm Sonya, a personal brand and style coach who's been exactly where you are, juggling career and business success, personal growth, and finding a style that truly fits. After decades in corporate leadership, I've learned that showing up isn't just about what you do. It's about how you align who you are and how the world sees you. This season, I'm bringing you practical strategies, bold insights, and honest conversations to help you amplify your presence, unlock your next level, and lead with clarity and confidence. Let's dive in. So this week, I am taking you behind the scenes again, this time for a masterclass that I actually ran for a group of business women, talking all about your personal brand and giving you some tips, hints, and some different ways to really think about your brand, your leadership, and your style and how they all integrate together. I hope you enjoy this little snip from behind the scenes. All right, so I want you to all, just for a second, imagine this. And most of this is probably true. I would say you are an absolute expert in your field. You've worked really hard to build your skills. You serve your clients with absolutely everything that you've got, and you're growing your business. But for some reason, sometimes it can feel like people don't really see you, the real you. They don't really recognize your whole value. And sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes you can feel like there's these opportunities that are out in front of you, but they always just feel a little bit out of reach. There's that bigger stretch to get to where you really want to get to. Has anyone ever experienced that or felt like that at times? Yeah, I can see some heads nodding. We've all been there. And, I think it's something that you've just got to keep in mind as I go through this presentation and see where the opportunity is. Because if I tell you about two people that I've worked with and know really, really well. So one, Jane, was originally, before we started working, she was talented, she knew her stuff, she was really, really hard working. She just struggled, and this was in corporate, she really struggled to gain that visibility and trust that she really wanted out in the marketplace. And she just felt like she was spinning her wheels. She was sweating, she was working it out, she was doing everything she could possibly do. And then if I think about one of my other clients, Sarah, who was equally talented, but she had this magnetism, I would say, about her. She was showing up consistently. Her presence, every time she walked in a room, she was one of those people who was like, oh, wow, okay, Sarah's here. She was really magnetic. And, it gave her opportunities that actually fell, what seemed like to others, fell into her lap naturally. So if you compare these two individuals, the question becomes, well, what's the difference between the two? It wasn't skill, it wasn't expertise. There was something about their presence. There was something about their branding. Overall, it's how and which they owned who they were as they walked into a room. And so that's really what I'm here today to help you really unlock really the trust and recognition and how to really step you out as the leaders in your particular field. This is absolutely not about creating a new version of you. It's about really amplifying what is already inside of you and pulling it out to the outside, because that is really what makes you really unique and different. So before I get started, I really want to dive into what is personal branding. You gave me some comments at the beginning around your kind of, maybe it's this, maybe it's a bit of that. So I want to make sure that you're really clear on my perspective and my definition of personal branding and how it can actually become one of the most powerful tools in your toolkit to own your own space and own any room that you walk into. So When I think about branding, I think about positioning. I think about you positioning yourself because if you don't do it, the world is going to do it for you, regardless. So, and if you don't do it, you're also going to end up risk being, I guess, what's called invisible to some extent, right? Because if you own your own brand, you become magnetic, and you'll hear me use that word a little bit today. And this is a quote by David Breyer. And so, really, if you don't give the market your story to talk about, they'll define it for you. And I think if you think about maybe some people you might know or brands you see out there, you'll see where someone's got a really strong brand and the story that they're putting out there for everyone versus someone who may not, and you can't really see who they are. So, why does personal brand even matter? It's, if you think about it, the world today is changing significantly, right? You turn every post you scroll on Instagram, any business door you open today, what's the one thing we're all talking about? AI. How AI is going to help us, improve efficiencies, how tech's going to do this, that, and the other, right? So this rise of automation in this world. So you're seeing a whole lot of that. You're seeing an increase in sort of competition when it comes to social media, more people understanding that, maybe creating an online business or doing something as, part of a portfolio career. So getting online is starting to feel sometimes like it's getting saturated. So with all these things happening out in the world, you come back to business basics. How do you actually start to get clarity around your brand so that people out there can see you for who you are and what you actually do? So if you think about how do you normally get clients, how do you develop trust within businesses? If we go back to old school basics, probably initially it was by referral, right? It's by trust because you actually know someone. So therefore you might be getting a lot of referrals into your business. So they're the ones who are actually getting hired. The same goes in the online world, right? Because your personal brand will help you stand out and create what's most important, your authentic, sort of unique connection. So, just reminding again that if you don't shape it the way you want to do it, then you've got that potential risk of being overlooked. So that's really why I look at it as why it really matters today's day and age. So, if we haven't met before, as Jess has said, I'm Sonya Choi La Rosa. I am absolutely obsessed with helping ambitious, high achieving women bridge the gap for who they are and how they show up so they're seen, valued, and recognized for the impact that they actually create. And so, why this really matters to me is after spending, 25 years in high level corporate and leadership roles, and navigating rooms where perception mattered just as much as skill, I saw really that it doesn't matter how much you could actually deliver and do and give and hustle. If I didn't have the right perception there, if I wasn't owning my space in those rooms, then it wasn't enough for people to see value. So now I'm actually working with women to really align their personal brand and their style to take them really into that next level. So I absolutely understand that feeling when you know you're capable of more, but realizing that something isn't quite right or it's not landing. And it's never to do with your expertise. It's that your brand presence and style really aren't necessarily working for you as much as they could be. And I've seen so many incredible women who actually can get stuck in this space because they're not really positioning themselves in a way that match their value. So that shift, if I flick back to a bit of a story, for years, I climbed this corporate ladder doing all the things. But when I sat down and realized that I had built success for, which seemed like for everyone else except for me, then, and my legacy, then that's when I kind of realized, hang on a second, I need to shift something. I need to actually start to focus on my own brand. I need to understand, how do I actually navigate those rooms in a different way? And so instead of trying to fit into somebody else's mold, so, it might have been that people were saying you had to dress in a suit, you had to go and network, and go to those mass networking events or do all of those things, which actually didn't really align with my brand. Then it was about sitting down and working out what was really important to me so that I could actually build out a presence, so I could actually focus in on the individuals that I did want to resonate with, what was important to me in those particular spaces. So today, again, I really want to help you unlock whatever shift it is that you need to make, because showing up in particular spaces isn't just about the style. It isn't about logos and colors and things like that, or just looking good online. For me, that's all superficial. It's transactional. It's actually coming back to the root here around owning your value and leading with confidence, and how you can actually do that so the world can actually see you for the value that you bring out. When I think about personal branding and the way my big vision and mission actually works around this, I would say personal branding is probably one of the most misunderstood concepts in business. So before we start to help you build yours, let's really break down some myths around this. So what personal branding is not. It's not just for influencers or big business. It's for you as a coach, practitioner, entrepreneur, employee, because you are the face of your business. It's not just about aesthetics, as I said. So branding isn't just about colors and fonts. It's the entire experience that you bring to any room, whether that's a virtual room or whether that's a room face to face. And whether it's work to weekend, right? Your experience is holistically you. And I think most importantly, it's not about being perfect or polished, that 100% version, right? Because we know, you're hearing it more and more, again, with that rise of AI, people are craving that authenticity, not necessarily that perfection piece. So when I think about it, the truth around it is it's about trust and positioning and building that. It's about clarity and visibility. And it's about what I call leadership presence. And I don't define leadership as someone who's leading large teams or anything like that. You're leading your business, you're leading yourself, and you're leading your clients. So you have a role to play in that. So if you look at this diagram here, to put it simply, on the far left circle there, you're really looking at who are you internally? What do you represent? What are your values? What do you stand for internally? And then how does your external, being your visual presence, the way you communicate, how you hold all of those pieces, how do they come together to create a brand, a leadership vision, and a style that is absolutely comfortably you? So sometimes people think of this, or I describe it in a way that most business owners will be holding a torch, right? So if you can imagine, you might be holding a torch going, I need to find my ideal client. I need to find where is that person, right? To bring that business in, and really kind of chasing those opportunities. But a strong brand is actually like a lighthouse sitting up on a hill. Why? Because what does a lighthouse actually do? It stands out there confidently, sending out a really clear and recognizable signal that attracts the right people to your business and to your brand. So I want you to think about that for a second. And if you had to describe your brand's energy in 3 words, what would you say they are? So maybe I'll give you a second to kind of jot that down if you think about it. And remember, when I'm talking about the whole brand piece, remember, I'm not separating your business from you. It is one and the same, because it's too hard to wear multiple hats. I've been there, I've done that, and it doesn't work. Now, my question to you is, does your social media, does your website, does your communication, and does your style link into that energy that you've described in those 3 words? And if you're looking at it going, Yes, it does. I'm feeling good. 10 stars, right? If you're identifying there's a little bit of a gap there, that's a good thing, right? Because we know now. And so it gives you sort of a stake in the ground to start to go, well, let me think about that now. What does that mean? What do I need to start to shift the direction to if those three energy words is what I not only want to present to the world, but most importantly, what do I want my clients to feel when they engage with my brand? Because your personal brand isn't necessarily what you say, it is how people feel when they interact with you. I think there's a few quotes around the place which actually talk to people remember how you felt in a particular situation more so than necessarily the strategy or the structure or anything else that comes out of that conversation, because it was how, and that even applies to people leadership as well. So now you understand my kind of view on personal brand. Let's talk about how do you actually bring it to life. Now, I can go into lots and lots of detail around this, but again, I said, like, I'm kind of hydroplaning over all three of these just to give you a bit of a taste and feel for where there might be opportunities for you to really pull the lever and accelerate in these particular areas. So if you think about, again, I've talked about it and touched on it throughout the beginning of this presentation, but if people don't know you, they won't buy from you, right? We know and understand, it's the whole know, like, trust concept. But visibility isn't necessarily about being everywhere. It's actually more so about being intentional. I want you to really think about that, because I know some of us, if you're an extrovert, but being visible, being out there, all of those sort of things, you'll be like, I'm there, it's all good, I can do that. If you're a bit of an introvert extrovert, so I'm going to put myself in that bucket, I much prefer, I'm a 6'2", but by the way, if you're familiar with human design, I much prefer being an introvert, a quiet, like internal. And where I need to, I will have to then pull out the extroverted sort of side of me. So it is about much more about being intentional. So when I think about visibility, here are three key drivers I just want you to think about and consider, and maybe even rating yourself from a 1 to 10. How much of this am I doing today? How would I rate myself? And is it an area that I can actually think of driving more with to be able to own my brand? So, number one, when I talk about becoming the face of your brand, I want you to think a little bit around when you think about brands that you might know and love who are actually individuals. Yes, we all might have our business brand, but in the end, as I said before, people buy from people. So, if you think about some big known brands out there, I'll just quite a few here. So, for example, Oprah, Richard Branson, Brene Brown. You think about those individuals, there's a real level of, okay, I see that person in my mind and I instantly get feelings, or what do they stand for? What's important to them, etc. So think about how can you make sure, if you're not already, being the face of your brand in some way, shape, or form. And many of you are probably already owning that particular space. Number two is around, communicating your brand clearly. So when I think about that, I think about maybe three key things. One is your bio, right? Whether that's if you're on LinkedIn or if you're on Instagram or wherever you are, or your website about your About Us page. Some people don't even give that, much thought. Can people immediately tell who you are, the essence of your brand and who you help and what you do? What about your, I'm going to call it an elevator pitch for want of a better word, but can you actually talk to your compelling brand in one sentence that is meaningful and people will really resonate in their words so they understand it? Your content. How does your messaging really reinforce your core brand and values and your personality? And coming back to that consistency piece, if I think about those examples, Oprah, Richard Branson, Brene Brown, to pull that in for you. So Oprah, decades of storytelling, leadership, presence across, multiple platforms. Richard Branson, every time you hear about him, yes, he's talking about Virgin, but he's also talking about, he's reinforcing he's adventurous, he's disruptive, he's playful. Brene Brown, as an example, she's always showing up so authentically in every single interview that she does. Her books, her TED Talks, what is she reinforcing? Her message of vulnerability all the way through. There's this beautiful thread, and I like to call it a through line. And we're going to take that through line all the way through all these key areas. And so that comes back around that communicate, and then leading into point 3 is that consistency. And when I say consistency, it's what is consistent for you. So, if that means consistency for you is 1 or 2 times a week doing whatever that is, maybe showing up on social media, maybe it's talking to your clients, maybe whatever that looks like, right? So don't think consistency has to mean 7 days a week doing whatever, right? But at least getting that consistency, because that is where that trust and recognition really kicks in. So quick challenge for you. When was the last time you actually Googled yourself? And then had a critical look, given what we've just talked about so far, to think about, is this really saying, and is this really clear about who you are and what you do and where you really want to be able to show up authentically? Those 3 energy words, right? If you come back to that, does it actually hit the mark or not? So that was visibility. Well, I hope you enjoyed part 1 of the behind the scenes of the masterclass that I recently ran. If you want to hear part 2, then tune in next week and you'll get the next part. See you then.